Dear colleagues, we will start in a minute, please, so take your seats. We are starting in a minute, please. Dear colleagues, we are starting our side event, which is a distinguished panel from all over the world. I will present our panelists a bit later with a representative from a civil society and different nations here in our pavilion, which symbolize, unfortunately, a tragedy of Kakhovka Dam. So we are sitting on the floor and imagine that we are drawing. Unfortunately, it is the biggest man-made military crime of this century, and which brings us to the same level of, I don't know, like Pakistan that is floating, or the natures, or the small islands that also under the threat of being washed by the ocean, the consequences of the climate change. But even those through hard time, we are very ambitious and willing to present our pledge to fight with the climate change. And I would like to present our Minister Ruslan Strelets, who will present the ambitions of Ukraine. And as I mentioned, this is first ever presentation. No one in Ukraine saw it, so you are the first one to witness it, to comment it, or to brought your vision. We can maybe amend it if you provide us with a good recommendation. But like definitely we are willing to show a seriousness of our climate action. Mr. Ruslan, please, the floor is yours. Timing is really crucial. 15 minutes for the presentation, please.
Thank you. Thank you, dear friends, colleagues, excellencies. You know, this is the second pavilion of Ukraine. We had a first pavilion on COP27. This is a really welcome all of you here. First of all, because this is not only a place where we show the results of Russian aggression. We also understand and feel that the pavilion of Ukraine is a place of unity. Place of unity with our partners, with our friends, and the place of finding the right decision. And I hope that our climate policy, which will have start here in this pavilion, will be very resultative and will be very useful not only for Ukraine, but for whole globe. So 2023 was the hottest year on record for the planet, according to the scientists. Ukraine is going through another of its hottest year, the second year of the war. The world is trying to reduce its carbon footprint on the planet. The climate terrorist Russia is destroying this decades-long aspiration as billions of dollars in investment on the way to carbon neutrality every day. If the aggressor is not stopped, it will burn the whole world. Thus, over 555 days of war in our country, CO2 emission reached 150 million tons. Of these, 60 million tons were caused by fires and military activities. More than 30 million tons are generated by neighboring countries. Climate problems cannot wait. They are already leading to the extinction of territories. The world's economic losses could reach 120 to 600 trillion by 2100. In the south of Ukraine alone, we may lose 1 million hectares of land, almost the size of Montenegro. If we don't act now, our future will become even more uncertain. Only decisive action today can influence that our tomorrow will look like. We understand that at the national level, Ukraine's climate policy should be aimed at rebuilding on the principle of sustainable low carbon development. It is important for the world that as many countries as possible support holding Russia accountable for bringing the planet closer to climate catastrophe. How is Ukraine building its climate vector? Our climate policy will have a deep integrated impact to the process of post-war recovery, European integration, fulfillment of international obligations, and international cooperation. Our climate policy is already integrated into all levels of our international commitment. Every year, we submit reports under the UNFCCC. In 2024, we plan to review our second nationally determined contribution. In 2025, we aim to adopt more ambitious targets in line with the commitment of the Paris Agreement. We also plan to adopt a national energy and climate plan in 2024. In July this year, we adopted the Global Methane Pledge, an action plan to reduce methane emission. We plan to reduce them to 30% by 2030. On November 8, 2023, the European Commission published the Ukraine 2023 report, which noted our country's progress in implementing European integrational reform. This report is a guide for us on where we are going next. We have identified priority steps that we are implemented. For example, we have already updated and improved the MRV system. In 2024, the MRV system will be fully restored. Our climate policy is a cross-cutting approach. It encompasses the transformation of all policies such as fiscal, monetary, investment, public, and social. For us, the implementation of climate policy today is also a matter for green recovery of Ukraine. The national idea is not just the reconstruction of the country. Our national idea is a recovery that will meet global environmental standards. We understand that without implementing a high-quality climate policy and green transformation, we will not be able to attract investment for this purpose. That is why we pay sufficient attention to both the development of the climate governance architecture and the issues of mitigation and adaptation of climate change. Ukraine is building a comprehensive infrastructure to implement its climate policy. We have identified 5 key measures to implement climate policy. Adoption of a framework law on the principle of climate policy, launch of the emission trading system, regulation of circulation of ozone depleting substances and if gases, development of a climate change adaptation strategy, international cooperation under Article 6 of Paris Agreement. In fact, we are currently working on a framework law. We plan to adopt it in 2024. The law should become the basis of Ukraine's climate policy and contain a taxonomic framework for the implementation of regulation in future. We are already developing a concept, the action plan for the implementation of an emission trading system. Ukraine has suffered significant economical losses. In 2022, the GDP declined by almost 30%. This was reflected in CO2 emissions. They are currently below the target set under the NDC2 by 2030. But the country's recovery will increase emission. Therefore, the delta of CO2 emission below the level set in NDC can already be sold on the market and become an additional source for financing for the current needs for Ukraine recovery. Ukraine already has agreement with the Switzerland and is on the way to cooperating with Japan to buy out excess quotas under Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. We are ready to cooperate with every country. We want to be a participant in the carbon market. We emphasize that all the countries that are currently ready to cooperate with Ukraine under Article 6 of Paris Agreement are also contributing to its green recovery. Ukraine already has reporting and verification monitoring system in place, which is an important tool for launching an emission trading system. Why is it so important for us to build our own ETS? Ukrainian business, which are already struggling to operate in the midst of the war, may face a new challenge in 2026. Starting from January 1st, 2026, their products that leave a carbon footprint will be subject to the CBAM. To prevent this, we have drawn up a plan and understand the key stages of launching an intensive system to achieve climate goals. We are working on each of them. We plan to launch a pilot ETS in 2025 with a full launch in 2026. This will allow us to join the European emission trading system. After all, we don't want our deferrals under the CBAM or any special conditions to be the only reason why Ukraine will not be accepted in the EU tomorrow. Instead of asking for any concessions, we are building our own ETS. Ukraine is capable for achieving its goals. According to the European Commission, in the last year of war alone, we have done exactly as much toward European integration as we did in the 7 post-war year before that. So we are building an ETS. We are not worried about the CBAM. We will be an average inside the CBAM. Our plans will be reflected in the Ukrainian facility and in the government's priority action for 2024. An efficient infrastructure will increase the absorption of funds and build the trust to international partners in Ukraine. That's why it's important for us to establish the Ukrainian Climate Fund, carry out rapid reform, form an ecosystem of training and project development, launch the Climate Office. The first step has been taken. Together with German partners, we have opened the Climate Office in Kyiv this year. The Climate Office in Ukraine is our platform for cooperation under the Paris Agreement, expert to support the development of cross-sectoral climate legislation and ensure the European integrational process, platform for implementing ETS mechanism in Ukraine, tool for assessing the implementation of the country's green recovery. Adaptation to climate change is an important element of climate policy. This applies to all areas of life and economical sector. This includes agricultural, construction, industrial, energy, etc. We have already seen that the temperature has risen by about 1.5 degrees in summer and autumn, and almost 1 degree in winter and spring over the past 20 years. Every second season is dry in Ukraine. The water flow on rivers and lakes has changed by -3% annually. We are ready to face such weather events as hurricanes and storms. But we also need to understand that the Russian aggression has contributed to the change in ecosystem. Measures to adopt our cities and regions are becoming a priority for us. Ukraine has adopted the strategy for environmental security and climate change adaptation for 2030. We are already restoring our forest. The Green Country program is our confirmation of the European integration course we took before the war. The EU countries plan to plant 3 billion trees and Ukraine 1 billion trees. And now, despite the war, we have fulfilled our program by almost 44%. The Green Country initiative of the President of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, will enable us to improve emission absorption by 12,000 tons of carbon, including increasing green space and restoring wetlands. Climate policy is only possible if work is integrated with other ministries, business education, science development, and innovation in the climate sphere. Basic math shows that investing in climate change adaptation can save 4 times more money. Therefore, we are already starting to work in this area to implement educational, scientific, and innovative measures. This is only a part of our main activities. The bigger picture is much more deeper, as education reform is currently underway. And there are plans that we are already to be proposed. Our policy will allow Ukraine to implement a cap and trade, use and pay mechanism. This will encourage everyone to think about the consequences of climate change. This will help reduce the impact of greenhouse gases and increase budget revenues. Do we see Ukraine as a climate neutrality country in future? Exactly, yes. As our President Vladimir Zelensky said, rebuilding Ukraine is not only about what we have to do after our victory, but also about what we have to do right now. It is not just about rebuilding the walls that were destroyed by shelling. Ukraine has to become the freest, most modern and safety country in Europe in every sense. This includes the state of our environment. I am confident that we will do it. Glory to Ukraine.
Thank you, dear Minister. I guess we will have a Q&A session a bit later after the statement of everybody. And honestly saying, as a moderator, I'm a bit concerned with how to do the formation. So I decided not to care about titles, but to do the clockwise approach. And I guess we will be traveling through different continents, through different hemispheres. So I guess we will start from the European Union. I will give you the microphone, so don't worry. Then we'll follow up with the Germany, then Canada and Guatemala from a different hemisphere. And we will finish up with the New Zealand, and we do hope that our Japanese colleagues will be able to manage to go there. So we are pleased to have with us Diederik Samson, who is the head of the cabinet to the European Commissioner Wopke Hoekstra, who is recently joined the European Commission as a climate change commissioner, which is really important for us. I guess, like the Minister, you had once met the commissioner and discussed several issues with him. So, like, can you tell us, like, please, what have you heard? Whether it's ambitious or not during the war, like what could be done more? Will you take us to the European Union soon? So
won't be able to answer that last question on my own. I have a personal opinion, but that doesn't count here. Yes, as you said, Commissioner Hoekstra started in September. Before that, I was the head of cabinet of EVP Timmermans, who was dealing with the energy transition, the Green Deal as a whole. And I must say, again, I'm impressed of what you're doing as a country in wartime to comply with regulation that some countries in peacetime do have difficulty complying with. So that's a huge compliment to the dedication of your country. And in fact, it brings me back a few years when EVP Timmermans had a conversation with the Foreign Minister Kuleba. And that was only 3 weeks after the Russian invasion. That was only 3 weeks after that horrible war started. And I think Kiev was under siege still at that moment. And I must admit that at that time, I thought, well, the last thing that that country will have on its mind right now is environmental policy. Well, let's see. Mr. Timmermans knows Mr. Kuleba from the past, so they might have a fruitful chat. It was obviously on Zoom. So the screen opens, and there's the Minister of Foreign Affairs for Ukraine. And he says, oh, Mr. Timmermans, it's good to see you. I want to tell you, after we've beaten the Russians, and this was 3 weeks after the invasion, after we've beaten the Russians, we will enter the European Union, and our entry ticket will be clean gas, hydrogen, and biogas. I almost fell from my chair at that moment, because I thought, okay, this man fighting for his country, for his life, for his family's life, is thinking about the future, while the rest of Europe was still thinking, oh my God, what is happening here? And that shows the dedication. And it also shows the potential, because it was not just a pie from the sky. Ukraine has a huge potential in providing Europe with clean gas. Obviously, when Russia falls away as the provider of natural gas, and it should, we shouldn't buy a molecule of that gas as soon as we can. Obviously, there's other needs for suppliers for clean gas, and hydrogen and biogas is an enormous potential. In that context, we've started a task force with the Ukraine, working from the European Commission with the Ukraine on developing these projects for biogas first and hydrogen later. And that shows that this is not just a piece of paper with nice promises and commitments. There's also real work going on, and that's the real importance. Again, I'm incredibly impressed with the work. I was impressed. I was actually astonished by the announcement of the Minister of Foreign Affairs 2 years ago, or almost 2 years ago now. And I sincerely have the confidence that in the coming years, you will not only beat the Russians, but also indeed embark further on this pathway to a clean future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It sounds very optimistic. And also, just for you to say, like, we here have the pictures of the first ever wind park built during the war. It's our internal investor. But we have more. We have first ever biomethane plant built in Ukraine this year, with also like domestic investor without any further guarantees, etc. It means that Ukrainians believe in its country, believe in its victory, believe in its green recovery. And if not we, who else would believe and send a signal to the investor all over the world? So we'll definitely have green hydrogen, green biomethane, and etc., and green recovery and climate neutral continent definitely with the decade. Thank you for the support also for this pavilion. We are going to Germany, and we have Dr. Anna Lurman, which is a Minister of State for Europe and Climate of the Federal Foreign Office of Germany.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, and thank you for hosting this event, and thank you for your dedication to green policies. I mean, I can underline everything that you just said. It's just so impressive in this ongoing brutal and illegal war of aggression to really keep up the dedication, working on a green future that really deserves all of our applause and admiration. And I think what we can hear from your presentation that you just gave us is really, I mean, like this image also symbolizes a lot of hope, a hope for Ukraine, but also hope for all our agenda that brought us here together at the COP in the first place, the hope that it's possible to actually keep our planet an inhabitable place in this space system, the hope that we manage to keep the 1.5 degree within reach, looking at your determination under these really adverse circumstances. I think this really needs to give us hope and inspiration for also the rest of the COP here and the work on these important issues. And as German government, we're very proud to support you here, your presence in this pavilion, but also we work, as you mentioned, closely together also with the climate office in Kiev, with several other initiatives that we took with our International Climate Initiative. But I think most of all is really the work on green hydrogen. That's one. We opened also a green and hydrogen office in Kiev. So here indeed this vision of Mr. Kuleba that you outlined to really be a role model for transporting also green hydrogen to the rest of Europe. I think that's really important and really good. But also we need to, as you said, think about building back better. So the green recovery is key. And here we are, as you know, working a lot with you on in the platforms on developing the ideas and the plans for how to build back better. But of course, we are also providing the winter assistance that is needed for this very winter now, which also includes supplies to the energy system, of course. And here we see again how a transition to renewables is not only good for climate, but also for resilience, because renewables require a decentralized energy grid. So contributes to the resilience of countries in adverse conditions. And to close, I just want to highlight that indeed a robust climate policy is particularly relevant also for your pathway into the European Union, as the EU emphasizes environmental sustainability quite a lot. And I think with what you outlined here today, but also what you've shown over the last months is of all the pre-accession talks that were ongoing, that really Ukraine is ready for accession talks to the EU. And I really expect that the European Council next week will take the necessary decision, because you really deserve to make this next step into the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And this applause goes also to Germany, to the European Union, for supporting this beautiful pavilion. Like, we really appreciate that Ukraine has its own home at this COP, and thank you very much. We really do appreciate this. We are traveling to a different hemisphere, to Canada, which is also a country that supports Ukraine a lot at the G7 and in bilateral. We have a lot of Ukrainians who live in Canada, and like, we do feel strongly support from you. So like, any comments how the war in Ukraine affect your country, affect the climate agenda, affect the fossil fuel debate? I bet there are stories to tell from your side.
Thanks very much. Look, you referred to the number of the strong ties between Canada and Ukraine. Others may not be as familiar, but actually by our reckoning, we're sort of number 3 in terms of Ukrainian citizens after Ukraine itself and Russia. So look, Australia's strong ties between the countries. I'll just echo the comments made by the other 2 speakers. It's truly extraordinary. When I saw what you put on the screen about the plans for your green future, it's extraordinary to see what you're able to accomplish, given what we see in the photos on the walls, that you're able to hope for and plan for the future when you're facing the daily trauma and challenges of dams being destroyed, of mines being laid. It's really really impressive. Look, in terms of the impact, the world is connected. We're all here because we know that our clean future depends on cooperation. But Ukraine plays a particular part in that. And when we think of its role as for the food security of the world, the importance that it has clean water, that it's able to produce agriculture, you talked about energy. There's a real connection, and we really depend on Ukraine being able to win this war and to build its future. So maybe just a couple of things. So my own country has certainly been very engaged in Ukraine since the beginning of this illegal war. We've been looking to support your food security. We've been working on addressing the demining question, but we've also recently concluded, even in the middle of all of this, your negotiators found time to conclude a new modernized free trade agreement between Canada and Ukraine. And that free trade agreement includes an environmental chapter, and within that, a cooperation around carbon pricing and carbon markets. So really excited to see that you've been able to make that change. I'll keep, for those who are familiar with my domestic politics, I'll leave that out. But just to say that, we have opposition politics in our country, as good democracies do. But really the future is a strong ties between Canada and Ukraine. We're not a member of the EU, although perhaps we'd like to be, but certainly think that there's a great opportunity there for you to participate in that green future. I think in the maybe last closing comments is that as we look forward to the happy day when this war ends and Ukraine can begin its recovery, I think what you see around this room are countries that are going to be supporting you in that future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sandra. It was Sandra McCardle, Assistant Deputy Minister, International Affairs Branch. Thank you very much for your support. We are staying in the same semis here, and we're really proud to have with us Marco Vinicio Ochoa, Vice Minister of Natural Resources and Climate Change of Guatemala. I would definitely say it's really important for us, and thank you for being here and spending your time within Ukraine. And what we are interested in, that our ministers travel all over the world, and he's been to one African country, and he said, I've returned with the impression that the African leader spoke with me saying the price of a metal increased because of the war in Ukraine, and please can you make something because we need your metal. Then we were in COP in Africa, in Egypt, and there were pledges about the grain. And there are a lot of consequences of the war in our country that we don't even feel and don't even think about it. Do you feel some changes during the latest year, and how it affect your domestic climate policy, please?
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank you to the people, thanks to the people and government of Ukraine for your kind invitation to visit your pavilion. Thank you so much. As maybe you remember, after 2 months, the war started. Mr. Alejandro Yamatei, the president of my country, was one of the first leaders around the world that came to Ukraine to show their support to the people and to the government of your country. Believe it or not, this war has also impacted our economy, as well as the economy of almost all countries around the world. Maybe the prices of natural gas perhaps don't impact us in a direct form as it impacts Europe. But dependency we have of fertilizers, of course, impact us. My country depends a lot of in agriculture. Mainly all our areas depend on agriculture, especially maize, especially coffee and other brands. Also, we also depend on cereals. Cereals for us are very important in our diet, as well as in the diet of children in my country. So for us, it is very important for these people, for this war to finish as soon as possible. So thank you again for this kind invitation. And we want to show you again all our support and our amor for you. Amor means love for you in Spanish. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And on behalf of all Ukrainian delegations, thank you very much for your ambassador and for your president for showing solidarity. It means a lot for us, and believe like Ukrainians remember all the time who was like with us during this hard time. So we will win, and definitely like thank you for your support. And like I would like to pass the floor to our distinguished colleague from Japan. We have Vice Minister for Global Environment Affairs, Minister of Environment of Japan, Mr. Yutaka Matsukawa. Thank you for being with us. We know that you need to leave very soon, so please, like we have a lot of common with Japan. We share the common nuclear tragedy, and our ministry is also responsible for the nuclear, for Chernobyl and Fukushima. We have planned fruitful cooperation in Kyoto Protocol. We are now having a fruitful cooperation during Paris Agreement because we first signed the Article 6 cooperation and looking forward for the implementation and showing a practical real case. So unfortunately, we were not able to hear the whole presentation. We'll definitely share it with you and do the additional round of it. But can you stress how the war in Ukraine affected your climate policy and what else we can do together?
Thank you. Thank you very much. After the big earthquake in Japan, 2011, I had to join the board meeting for adaptation fund, and at that time, one of the board member was a colleague from Ukraine, and she came to me and she sent me a very warm word, and thank you very much again. And so both countries has a very close relationship to nuclear accident. So based on these close relationship, COP27 at COP27, we have a minister level agreement to promote bilateral cooperation in whole environment field. And this year, based on this minister level agreement consensus, we have a close intensive discussion between both countries, both government in working level to come up with joint credit mechanism partnership. Hopefully the next bilateral meeting, such as the Ukraine Economic Reconstruction Conference to be held at Tokyo next February. So this is something like our common timeline to agree to the joint crediting mechanism between Ukraine and Japan. So now we work very closely with the Ministry of Environment in Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And indeed, this is a really fruitful cooperation and a lot of support we receive from your country and from the people of Japan. So thank you very much for this. Yeah, and especially thank for my daughter, because she is 12-year-old and she would like to study in Japan. She loved Japan very much and looking forward, maybe she will come to your place one day. Yes, thank you very much. I promised to set this to my daughter, so sorry for some personal stuff. Thank you very much. You know, today is the day of youth, so like if not today to remember the youth generation, like when next. And we are moving to our last but not the least participant. It's like Victoria Hallam, the Deputy Secretary from Multilateral Legal Affairs Group from New Zealand. And like we have also a lot of common with New Zealand, although you're like very, very far away, but like we also care a lot about our indigenous people who are Crimean Tatars, and they are suffering a lot also from Russian aggression. And we have like a big issue with Russia on Crimea because they are trying to put the emission from Crimea as their own, and this was like a lot of disputed area here. And like tomorrow we have at Boost 25, if I'm not mistaken, at 2 p.m. a big indigenous people like from Crimea, and I invite everybody to join it. So like what you are doing in your climate policy, whether the war in Ukraine and other stuff affecting you, like these global prices, and like what shared these insights from you.
Thank you very much. Kia ora koutou. I think coming from New Zealand, we are perhaps the furthest away of any of the countries represented on this panel. And thank you very much for mentioning the issue of Indigenous links. When I was shown around your beautiful pavilion, in fact, that was where my mind went. The Indigenous people of New Zealand, the Maori, consider that the earth, the forests, the seas are sacred beings and that they are descended from these sacred beings. So for me to see on the wall across there the physical evidence of the scars that Ukraine has suffered as a result of the war was very, very compelling. And I agree that with those who have said that it is a wonderful counter posture to the images of hope that we have on the screen, where you are telling us that even in the midst of such a terrible ongoing war of aggression, you are leading the way in having both an ambitious and very serious climate policy. So like other panelists, I am inspired and motivated by what we have heard today, and I think the world can be inspired and motivated by Ukraine. We don't in New Zealand, I think, have the same level of climate cooperation as many of the large countries here, but I can certainly say that the situation of Ukraine has spoken very strongly to New Zealanders, and that has been at the foundation of our responses to the war in Ukraine. We have focused from the outset in reinforcing the absolute illegitimacy of this war of aggression, in pursuing accountability for the wrongful acts, and in supporting the reconstruction. And we have been very interested in the Pillar 8 of the 10-point peace plan, and particularly the register of damages. And I think there are some links to the subject matter of today's event. So I'm hopeful that in the future, we too can have some constructive climate projects with Ukraine. I will be very pleased to take away the presentation so that we can study some of the things we are doing. We are interested in the linking of ETS systems, and although we're in the early stages of that, it'll be very interesting to see what might be possible. So thank you again. Thank you, Minister, for calling this event together, and we are profoundly inspired by what Ukraine is doing. Kia ora koutou.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues, especially like to reflect on your words, that you see that we are drawing, and a lot of states in Oceania also drawing, and we know that it's important for you. We were at your beautiful pavilion at Expo when you tell a story about the river. You know, it's really important when you give the imagine of nature as an subject, not as an object of polity. Like, it's a really interesting concept, and I believe personally that it will be reflected in the, I don't know, constitutional legal system of all of the country in the next couple of decades. It's really important for us. Dear colleagues, I guess I have only one thing to announce, and then I will propose for our minister to announce tomorrow's very important event, which we are trying to make aggressors accountable, not only the current one, but all the future one. So like, dear minister, if you allow, before we will start the Q&A session, like just to announce tomorrow's event for our colleagues maybe willing to join it, please.
Thank you, Alexei. Thank you for beautiful moderation, great moderation. So, dear colleagues, tomorrow we will have a high-level event. 1 month ago, we presented our big initiative for the peace. We announced the environmental declaration. This declaration is not only a piece of paper. It's not only obligations or some text. This declaration is about developing and starting the process of developing of platform which was announced by President Zelensky on COP27 intro, and platform which we hope will be in reality in 2024. What about this platform? First of all, we understand that from the first day of the full-scale invasion, we continue to record and to calculate our environmental damage. We use 7 new methodologies. We have a register of environmental crimes and our losses of Ukraine nature. Nature is like a silent victim of this war, but we need to help and to support to our nature. But environmental has no border. And we understand that it's very important to combine all our partners, all countries all over the world in one place where we can be connected not only on the political level, but on scientific level, on expert level, and to update our methodologies, to clarify all the information about environmental damage, and to find the right solution how to bring Russians to accountability. And I believe that this platform could be under the umbrella of President Zelensky peace formula, under the umbrella of point 8 of peace formula. And it could be the start of a big organization which will prevent future wars. If aggressor will understand that the war is expensive, not only about the price of military equipment, but also because of price which aggressor will pay for destroyed nature, I convinced that it will prevent a new wars. Now we understand that environmental losses, even without losses of ecosystem services, is maybe more than losses of destroyed infrastructure. But we need to do our best to increase the price of lost biodiversity and to show on the whole globe the global principle, the global methodologies, and the global understanding real price of the war. So tomorrow I'll present once again the declaration, and I invite all countries to join this declaration. We hope that at the beginning of the 2024, maybe in Germany, I hope in Berlin. We had a discussions with Minister Steffi Lemke, with your ambassador in Ukraine. We will start this process and we will have on board as many countries as possible from the whole globe. So I invite you to join our meeting, and thank you for coming today.
Dear Minister, thank you for announcing and teasing the tomorrow's event. I also would like to say that we are really proud to be joined by Zaki Akhtabi, the Minister of Climate, Environment, Sustainable Development and Green Deal of Belgium. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for joining us. And I guess we have like a couple of minutes for a couple of questions. So I will take two. Like we have one hand here, and for the gender equality, any male person willing? Okay, like we have one question. Please express, tell yourself and raise a question.
Hello. Hi, my name is Елизавета Badanova. I'm an independent energy expert working on the National Energy Climate Plan in the part related to gas. I have worked previously in Naftogaz, so I'm sort of specializing on the gas. And I have a question to Germany, but first I would like to really thank everyone because I'm deeply awed by the level of representation and interest in the country. So let's pin that down. So we have been talking about the climate policy and the that we are going there, including by the development of decarbonized gases. And in Ukraine, the industry is really eager to develop and to invest. And as Alexei mentioned, they are eager to do that without even sometimes foreign external funding. However, and there are things done on the Ukrainian side, and we know that we need to do them. But one of the issues that is currently blocking the expansion of the industry is the treatment of piped biomethane gas by the German side, that it's not currently possible to import biomethane via pipes, which is economically more rational than going through roads. You understand the security concern, you understand the increased money. So it would be really nice, really effective, really important for Ukraine to understand whether there could be a position from the German government on that front. And I think that this would provide a very fruitful ground for us as experts to develop the necessary framework, international arrangement, anything, because now we see that it seems to be a little bit of a things which is not moving anywhere. Thank you.
Yeah, so first biomethane plant in Ukraine willing to sell biomethane to Germany, but you don't willing to take it.
That doesn't sound very plausible to me. So I'm ready. I am not familiar with the discussions. I know that sometimes there are technical issues when it comes to pipelines. You're shaking your head. Okay, but I'm happy to look into it. And I know that we're working a lot also with our hydrogen office in Kiev on this topic of how we can go towards green alternatives to natural gas. So I'm happy to look into it, but I can't give any more details at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're running out of time, but to summarize, our minister gave a political promise on the highest possible level. So he promised to deliver this climate policy. So you are all the witnesses from different countries, and we have no chance to step back, to roll back. So this will be implemented because this is a promise on a highest possible level, dear minister. So everything that you pledged was recorded, has been heard, will be reported to its capital. So you have no chance to move that, only increase the ambition. So thank you very much for the support of our country. It's really important for us. And let's make a picture of everybody who was at this panel. Thank you very much.